Hello, my name is Lyle Murphy. I'm the founder of the Alternative to Med Center, and today we're going to be talking about benzodiazepine withdrawal. Probably about 40% of our population here at the center is going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. Why? Because it's not the kind of thing you want to do at a normative drug and alcohol treatment center. It's a very specialty sort of application. So, first question, what do benzodiazepines do? They increase the effectiveness of a neurochemical called GABA. GABA is the primary inhibitory neurochemical of your central nervous system. What does that mean? When one nerve is trying to talk to another and get it excited, it has a tendency to be like, hey, calm down, you don't need to be so excited. And there's not depolarization that happens down that nerve. GABA actually inhibits the chance of having depolarization from one nerve to the next. And one of the ways it does that is it blocks the calcium ions from getting in and creating the chemical change necessary in order to drop the resistance in that nerve in order for there to be nerve conduction. It is basically on a what do you feel on this end sort of thing. It helps you sleep, it helps you with anxiety, slippery slope of course, but it blocks overstimulation. Next question, are benzodiazepines addictive? Benzodiazepines are largely more addictive than, they don't hook you in the same way a drug like crack or heroin does, but when it does hook you, it really hooks you tight, Like, you can get off these other drugs and in a few days you're okay. Benzos, not necessarily the same way. In fact, Stevie Nicks was famous for probably not doing a perfect quote, but she went into drug alcohol treatment and she watched all these people that were doing opiates, heroin and such, and in 2 weeks they were like happy campers. She suffered for months and she's like, why? It's from Valium. According to the DEA, it is what they call a Schedule 2. A Schedule 2 are not considered to be overly habit forming, which is total BS. Habit forming or chances of having, a severe withdrawal. If the severe withdrawal from your medication that supposedly you're not addicted to can kill you, which benzodiazepines can, rapid coming off could throw you in a seizure, whereas heroin and the other drugs won't. Is that because of its lack of addictive properties? I don't think so. And you have to keep taking it in order for that to not happen and not die? I would say it's probably addictive. Next question, can I do a rapid detox off of benzodiazepines at a detox center? Certain people can get away with that. People that have gone on and off heroin a bunch of times and are drinking a bunch of alcohol and mix benzodiazepines with it, can they cold turkey? Yes, they probably won't like it, but they can. But for the majority of the population, and specifically our population, if you were to try to do that with them, it would go very, 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 very bad. And if you're considering that, you might want to reconsider that, because one of the challenges we have with detox facilities, let's say somebody comes in on so much alcohol that it's not safe for them to be in our lower level of care, which is not like full-blown hospital level, right? And they could go into alcohol withdrawal that could cause them a seizure and die. We have to send them off to a detox center where they can do that appropriately with a healthy amount of medications to keep a person from having those type of alcohol seizures. Well, the insurance that the person has might pay for 3, maybe a 5. If you're really, really, really lucky and you've got a doctor over there that's really, really championing you, maybe your insurance might pay for 7 days of treatment. Well, the philosophy of a detox center is to get you off all of your narcotic and your controlled substances. So they're going to do a benzo withdrawal super fast like that. And the number of people that come out in crisis and do have seizures is embarrassing. But that's what the insurance companies are paying for. That's what the detox facilities are going to do. And that's what you're going to get if you go there. One of the reasons they don't want to send you out with benzos, they just took you through a detox process. Most of the people that are going to those places are addicts. And if you hand them a script, they are going to abuse it. And so from a certain perspective, it makes sense. But for people that are taking medication as prescribed or slightly abusing it and really have anxiety that is going to overwhelm them if they go that fast, you don't want to go there. You don't want to do that because it's not going to go well. There's no really quick route for a lot of this stuff. Sometimes you have to just be gentle enough with yourself, and there's no reason to injure yourself to try to get to the place you want to be. You can do it in a way that has strategy, that actually is capable of getting you there without causing you to get hurt. Next question, what are withdrawal symptoms from benzodiazepines? Acute anxiety, inability to sleep, sometimes panic attacks. Since all these inhibitory chemicals are actually stimulatory in your gut, you have a lot of gut problems, digestion problems. Sometimes you may feel like your stomach is burning, is on fire, that your skin is on fire. The reason why I don't feel the clothes on my skin or the pressure of my eyelids on my eyeballs and things that are normative is because there's neurochemicals that put that into the background and only put things in the foreground that are really important. Like if I touch this aloe vera plant, it's got a really sharp thing on the end of it, and all of a sudden I'll get a sharp prick, and that'll make my awareness. And it'll get my awareness pretty quick because it's a sharp touch. If you're messing with the neurochemicals that regulate all that, suddenly everything might get confused, and soft touch might feel like the same as this pinprick, or normal digestion that you don't even feel might feel like you're trying to put rocks and break the rocks down with a sledgehammer in your stomach. So these things that would normally be in the scenery of your experience suddenly become the scene of your experience. Usually that just means everything is hypersensitive. Next question, why do some people have a harder withdrawal than others? So I talk about this in a lot of our videos. There is a differential between people who are experiencing anxiety and other mental health symptoms some of the times, and there's people who are experiencing it all of the time. Now, if I'm having intermittent anxiety, there's a whole variety of reasons why that might be. It could be my blood sugar, it could be social phobias, it could be interdosing withdrawal from my medication, it could be hormonal, it could be cortisol levels throughout the day. I mean, there's a whole panoply of things that could be causing this. If you're okay sometimes, you're not okay sometimes, there's a lot of reasons why that is. And usually those reasons are actually very remediable once you figure out what it is. If you're experiencing anxiety all the time and you can't sleep and you can't sleep, you're having these ruminating thoughts and you have anxiety that's full time, like even if you're meditating or in a counseling session or something and you have this like background roar of in your nervous system and it's constant, that is probably neurotoxicity. Those people that are neurotoxic, they are going to have a much harder time coming off this medication, because what neurotoxic means, it's poisoning those same chemicals that are meant to create balance in your nervous system so that they can't create balance. So if the inhibitory aspect of your neurochemicals is poisoned by something, organophosphate pesticides or mercury or something, then you can't find that balance. And everything is going to be hypersensitive all the time. The drugs for those people is like if a normal exchange in the nervous system between the part of the nerve that holds the neurotransmitter and the part of the nerve that has receptors across the synapse is like a game of catch. I throw a neurotransmitter to you, you throw it back, and I'm throwing this ball and I'm lobbing it to you, and you're catching it with your bare hand and you're throwing it back, and it doesn't hurt, right? That's normal. Now, all of a sudden, I have a Major League Baseball player step up to the plate and start throwing you, the receptor, fastballs at 100 miles an hour. And you start trying to catch that with your bare hand. What's going to happen? Your hand's going to be hurting, and you're not going to catch too many of those balls. That's when you get the catcher's mitt of some kind of anxiolytic, some kind of benzo. Basically, what's happening in that analogy is that you're neurotoxic, you've got a pitcher that's throwing fastballs, and your nervous system can't handle that. So what do you think happens when you have that neurotoxic situation still persisting and you start thinning down that glove? You thin down the glove and you thin down the glove and you thin down the glove. I mean, maybe you build up some more calluses to handle a fastball, but by and large what's going to happen is it's going to start hurting at some point and you're going to be stuck and you're going to be like, why can't I get off this medication? So the people that have the hardest time coming off any sort of anxiety medication are usually the people that are neurotoxic. If your withdrawal is lasting into a protracted state, more than likely you really want to investigate your heavy metals and maybe your other toxic poisons to see what could be poisoning your neurophysiology. Should I cross over to Valium? Inpatient, we usually don't do that because we are on a bit of a time schedule to get people through this. I mean, even though we have a longer withdrawal, we don't have forever, and the insurance companies and people's funds are definitely limited, so we try to move people along. We have found that the best way is to withdraw them off of the medication that they are already adjusted to. Maybe change the dosing a little bit. Like for instance, If they're on 2 milligrams of Ativan and it's only at night, and they're waking up and maybe 11 o'clock in the afternoon, they're having severe anxiety, that's because they're experiencing an intradosing withdrawal because the medication half-life isn't enough to carry them a full 24 hours. Now, the rationale behind going to Valium is to try to extend that half-life so it's going the whole day. Another mechanism would be take 1.5 milligrams at night, take 0.5 milligrams during the morning, so you have less intradosing withdrawal, and then step them both down at the same time in unison, so we're missing that intradosing withdrawal. And with all of the supporting things that we do, that makes it a lot more approachable. But doing this at home, you've got a whole different time frame, you've got a whole different schedule, and yes, switching over to Valium may very well be the most effective strategy because Valium does have a longer half-life, and things with a longer half-life typically are easier to withdraw from. It's not the speed, as they say, that kills you, it's a sudden stop. It's the sudden coming off of the medications. Even good genetics that detoxify these medications better than other people might be a liability because it's leaving your system so fast that your body doesn't have time to adjust. So the Valium can actually make it approachable. How I recommend you do this though, let's say you're on 4 milligrams of Klonopin. You take it both morning and both night. All right, so 2 milligrams in the morning, 2 milligrams at night, just to make it easy on the math. Don't switch all of it over to Valium all at the same time. Try changing out a little bit of that. Like try changing out 1 milligram of Klonopin for like 8, maybe 10 milligrams of Valium. And just see how that goes. Are you integrating that new drug in the same way as you were your old drug? One of the methods sometimes we do a crossover here because other reasons haven't worked, and the way to keep it moving along quickly for us is to take half of their dose of Klonopin or Ativan or Xanax or whatever and replace half of it with Valium. So they're on 2 milligrams of Klonopin, they're on 2 milligrams, make it 1 and 1, and then an equivalent dose of Valium in both of those spots, okay? Then, don't cross them completely over to Valium. Keep them on that Valium, reduce the Klonopin down until they're only on, let's say, 10 milligrams of Valium here and 10 milligrams of Valium here, and then withdraw that. That's a way to do a crossover in a way that doesn't have people have to fully transition over to medication, but gives them the support where they need it at the lower dosing to have a longer taper. Next question. What medications can make my withdrawal easier? Most medications are spending something. In this case, benzodiazepines are generally spending GABA. They are making the synapse more permeable to GABA, and if you do a urine neurotransmitter test on people that have been taking benzos, you actually see more GABA metabolites. Is it because the drug is giving you GABA? No, it's because it's spending GABA. And once you've spent GABA, then you need more of the medication that's not going to be working that well. One of the effective tools is to use a bridge medication called gabapentin. Gabapentin is GABA, a naturally occurring substance attached to a pentane molecule. So oftentimes people that are really GABA deficient from taking a benzo will take this much lighter medication and get a much stronger effect than they were even off their benzos because they're so GABA depleted. That's actually a good thing unless you're driving or operating heavy machinery or in performing arts or a dancer or something and lose your balance. It can feel very kind of like you're drunk. So that's not a bad thing if you're trying to get through a withdrawal. But some people, and if you go on to the benzo sites, there's as much good information on there as there's bad information. It's really kind of hard to vet it out, especially if you're suffering and you're in fight or flight and anything kind of triggers that fight or flight. Gabapentin might be labeled as like, oh my God, I had the hardest time getting off gabapentin. The people that have the hardest time getting off gabapentin are the same people that have the problem with the glove getting thinner because the pitcher's still pitching too fast of a fastball. Those people are generally the ones that are neurotoxic, and they're going to have a hard time getting off of anything. Gabapentin is a much, much less toxic drug. In fact, it doesn't even require liver enzymes to detoxify it. It is detoxified in your kidney. It's water soluble. One of the consequences of that is it's a very short-acting medication. It only really has an efficacious effect for about 4 to 6 hours. So it's not going to help you with your anxiety or your taper. If you're only taking it once a day, you might have to spread it out a little bit. Putting in a gabapentin when you're taking away a Klonopin or a Xanax or whatever, and just kind of replacing those out slowly across the field and getting you off of the benzo is generally an effective strategy because then you can get off the gabapentin almost invariably a lot easier unless you're neurotoxic in that case. Again, it's going to be hard to get off of anything. Next question, are some anxiety different than others? Again, the anxieties that are intermittent are a lot easier to deal with than the ones that are neurotoxic. The neurotoxic ones, really there's no therapy that's going to bust through that besides getting rid of the neurotoxicity. Now, people that take care of themselves for years and eat organic food and potentially causing the problems. To amplify that a little bit further, we, here at Alternative Meds, we put people through physiological processes that dump out those heavy metals, dump out those organic poisons like pesticides and such that can be fouling up the works a lot quicker. But yeah, the people that are neurotoxic have a completely different hand, and for something like mercury, it can take months and months and months and months. Not necessarily in treatment with us. We get a person started on it, show them that, hey, now you're feeling better from these therapies, and continue that with an outpatient provider that can continue the process so that they can continue to experience relief. But there's no magic wand for neurotoxicity. It is a process that takes time in order to resolve. Whereas a lot of these other things, it might be a simple fix. It really might be something as simple as your blood sugar, your hormones, your cortisol levels, maybe your thyroid medication you're taking too much. I mean, intermittent anxieties have a lot different and much more quick and straightforward way to resolve themselves. Next question, I feel that this medication is poisoning me. I'm taking 0.125 of Klonopin, but I'm not eating or sleeping, and I've been cutting for close to a year. Can you finish my taper? I mean, yes, but there's people that come in, they're like, they're holding on to this last little crumb of medication, and they're like not sleeping, and they're not eating, and like their gut's on fire, and they're having panic attacks, and they want me to just come and just finish them off. Like I've got this magic wand that I can just like, okay, you're off, and now you're fine. It's kind of like they've thinned the glove down to the point where they're just like, I mean, their hand is practically bleeding, and they're like, can you just take that little bit of glove off of there and not do anything about the picture? No. Sometimes we might even have to put a thicker glove on so that you can sleep and eat and be able to actually do things that help with your detoxification physiology, so that we can put you through a program where you can detox enough, get the picture to slow down so that coming off of those medications is a lot less consequential. And there have been a good number of times where we've had to tell a person, we actually need to raise your medication first in order to stabilize you. Because if you're not sleeping and you're not eating and you're going through panic attacks, this is not a good place to be sitting for an IV, and you can't really. You need to sleep a little bit to be able to even detox. Most of that parasympathetic activity happens when you're sleeping. So to unpoison you when you're not stable is not very cost effective, and so sometimes you might have to do things that will help you sleep, including medication. And that's a compassionate thing, really. As tragic as it is for somebody that's painfully tried to cut and they think that they're right at the end of the home plate, but they have to back up and punt, is sometimes a very discouraging and potent message. But those same people, after about 4 to 6 weeks, when they're sleeping better and they're eating and things are working, can come off those medications and be like, oh my God, how did that happen? Like it was magic. Next question. What do you think of the damaged GABA receptor theory? I've seen the, what do they call that? Electron microscope looking things about the mutated receptors and such. And that people that have been taking benzos, they don't have the same receptors and they take a certain amount of time to heal. There might be some substance to that. But the same people that have suffered for a couple years, and they've maybe been off of meds even, and they're still suffering, and they're in this protracted withdrawal state that they're ascribing to the GABA receptor theory, the damaged receptor theory, we find out maybe that they're heavy metal toxic. And we clean out those heavy metals, and suddenly there's resolution. The heavy metal burden being eliminated didn't fix these GABA receptors. And we often see people that are detoxing from neurotoxic poisons pop out of this thing in a way that doesn't have the what they call Wallerian regeneration time frame of what it would take for nerves to regenerate. So I don't put as much credence in that as I put credence in the environmental medicine aspects of how your excitatory neurotransmitters might be not regulating themselves enough to be able to create balance. Next question. Does your brain go back to normal after benzodiazepines? Generally, yes. Out there in the wild, people oftentimes can have, once they quit benzodiazepines, that have been on it for a long time, may have symptoms that last months, sometimes even years. Here we generally narrow that down to much shorter than that, but by and large, as bad as it is, the brain does usually heal itself. Some people have struggles that are legendary. Most of those people, again, were neurotoxic and didn't discover that until later in their journey. Next question, how long does benzo withdrawal psychosis last? Well, benzo withdrawal psychosis is actually a withdrawal that's gone way, way, way too fast. A person that rapidly quits benzos can have a sudden onset of psychosis when that person didn't have any evidence of psychosis before. It'll last until you reinstate medication and stop it. A person will push out the other side of that differently than they will like people who have psychosis sort of history and schizoaffective type disorders. It will push through, but this is a sign of very abrupt, rapid detox, and it's not a good thing to try to push through that. Slow it down a bit. It's okay. Next question, how long does benzo rebound anxiety last? Well, again, if a person is not neurotoxic, it should last, 3 to 5 days. If a person has been on it for a long time, that rebound anxiety might last weeks or even a month or more. And if a person is neurotoxic, it doesn't really abate. It just sort of keeps getting worse and worse and worse the lower you get on the medication. Next question, what is a benzo flu and how long does it last? A benzo flu is really just the things that you go through coming off of a benzo. So it's not really like a flu, but since people have a lot of gastrointestinal problems, it may have excessive sweating or may have muscle tension and spasms. That sort of feels a little bit flu-like. And then you mix that with some anxiety and some panic attacks and some racing pulse and blood pressure. It may feel like a flu, and that's just another way to describe benzo withdrawal. And again, it'll last. For most people, if they did a rapid stopping of medication, they should get through it in 3 to 5 days. Yeah, not everybody can do that rapid of a taper and get away with it, but the people who do, they're usually going to feel it for 2 to 5 days. Next question, what is benzo belly? This is a term that sort of evolved out of social group communities, and it's describing, because there's the neurotransmitters and what they do up here, and usually what they do up here is the inverse of what they do down here in our what they call our parasympathetic, which includes our digestion, all of the functions of your digestion, like bladder control and everything, and also your sexual function. So they're inversely related. So whatever is inhibitory here, such as GABA, is stimulatory down there. So stimulatory for your gut means peristalsis, that squeezing of the intestines that moves, fecal matter and other stuff along. All of a sudden, that stops. So the benzo belly basically feels like a complete laxus of your intestinal system where nothing's really moving at all. It may feel like your stomach is on fire, like literally like second-degree burn on the inside of your stomach lining, even when you drink water. Probably that might even physiologically be happening, that there's some damage to the tissues in there because things aren't moving, but it also can be just a sensation that you're feeling because there's not a neurotransmitter balance there. Basically, GABA, which is the benzodiazepine is acting upon, is a inhibitory neurochemical that inhibits your central nervous system from having anxiety and from having other stimulation. That's in your sympathetic part of your nervous system, your awakening fight or flight part of your nervous system. It softens that. But in your gut and your parasympathetic, it does the opposite. So it actually causes stimulation. So what stimulation looks like in your gut or also for your reproductive organs, it activates that to some degree. And if you're not getting that, what happens is you have laxity in your intestinal digestive tract. So instead of getting that normal peristalsis that moves things along, it just goes flaccid and you don't move things nearly as well. And that can cause a host of symptoms that people say feels like burning in your stomach. Even when you drink water, it feels like it's fire going into your stomach. It can cause diarrhea. In some people, it's constipation, cramping, but for most people, it's going to be some level of digestive malfunction and appetite loss. Next question, what is considered long-term benzo use? Really, these things shouldn't be prescribed even in conventional wisdom for more than a couple weeks. They are very addictive. It's like stepping on you ever been to the super slide where they have that big yellow one that goes like that? Once you're on it, you don't stop, right? You step on it, and the next thing you know, you're on a wild ride. It's like that with benzos. You can get really hitched into these things pretty hard. I mean, is it addictive as like crack, where you smoke crack one night and suddenly you're addicted for the next 9 months? It's not quite like that, but you can get off the cocaine and not have ridiculous, mad, life-threatening symptoms, whereas the benzo it's like it wraps you from all sides and hooks into you in a way that is kind of like being chained and like in Gulliver's Travels. You're just like got the Lilliputians are all over you. To finish that question, what is considered long-term benzo use? If you've been on this medication for over a year, there's a good chance that you're going to have some struggles coming off of it. Are you going to have those same struggles at 2 months? Maybe. But if you've been on it for 30 years, you definitely that would be considered long-term benzo use. We do get people that are in their second and third decade here off of medications, but we have, special tricks, if you will, to do that in a way that doesn't capsize people for the most part. I would say anything over a year is going to be what I would consider longer-term benzo use. Next question, do benzos cause long-term damage? They can cause some impairment. Usually it's of cognitive function, of balance, of your ability to learn, especially like if you're trying to learn a new language or some kind of verbal learning, it can impair that. But just like with anything else, if your weight starts to get out of control, or you start to get a little bit saggy in your memory or slightly dementiaed, or you lose physical ability from inactivity, if you don't do anything to stop that, it's progressive. You can do things that actually will make you even better than you were before if you focus on the right things and really put your attention on it. So some of the long-term effects can be alleviated by focusing on those things and really looking to alleviate them and being very diligent about it. Next question, what are the long-term side effects of benzodiazepines? Memory loss, neurocognitive and neuromotor skills, and it just sort of builds on itself where you can get more anxiety, more ruminations, more sleep problems, because your body downregulates to the drug, and the drug becomes less and less effective, which can then make your anxiety and sleep and rumination problems become more and more intense, even though you're on the drug. The next question, is benzo memory loss reversible? Yes, and it might be something you have to put your attention on. Like I said, do memory learning exercises, get with somebody that helps with, they have techniques for people that have suffered strokes that help them with their learning. These kind of activities will probably help bring that memory loss around a lot quicker. Next question, is magnesium good for benzo withdrawal? Yes. And one of the mechanisms, as we discussed earlier, that benzos do is they block calcium. When you're coming off a benzo too fast, it's the calcium influx that causes the seizures. Magnesium is oppositional to calcium. So it's sort of like the magnesium will, to some degree, I mean, it's not going to stop a seizure, but it'll counteract the influx of calcium. So if you flood your body with magnesium, probably going to soften the effect. It also might get your bowels moving again, especially if you've had constipation. Next questions, can benzos cause schizophrenia? No, not schizophrenia, but they can cause psychosis if you're coming off of them too quickly. I mean, maybe if you had some other things going on and you were sort of leaning in the diagnostic, sort of container of schizophrenic disorders, it might get you there quicker or something, but it's not directly going to cause schizophrenia. Next question, can benzo withdrawal cause neuropathy? Oh yeah, because basically, you're not getting nerve impulses. Because of the benzo, you're not getting nerve impulses, especially to the finer tactile nerves. And when you're coming off the benzo, then all of a sudden that stuff starts to light up again, and you can have a combination of paresthesias in certain places, burning, tingling sensations that are affecting your extremities largely, your fingers, your toes, your feet, sometimes your legs, can even be on your face and lips. And for some people that, without the type of assistance that we give here, sometimes those neuropathies can form a large component of what they call the protracted withdrawal and could last quite some time. Usually they are self-limiting and will clear up at some point. I know that's not much consolation for people who are like in anxiety, because people in anxiety need something to fix their anxiety right now or fix the physiological symptoms they're having right now. And unfortunately, patience is a very rare commodity for this group. But the hopeful part is people do eventually come out of this, by and large, especially if they're dealing with any neurotoxic underlying symptoms. Next question, does benzo withdrawal cause seizures? If you come off a benzo too quick, you can have a seizure, and the seizure could be fatal. This is a big problem for people. A lot of times their doctor just cuts them off cold turkey and doesn't give them any resource for another doctor, and suddenly they're out of a script. This could be a problem. Now, if that does happen to you and you can't find any benzos, there's other anti-seizure medications that might keep you from having it turn really ugly, such as Trileptal or Depakote or something like that, that your doctor might be more amenable to prescribing you. If you got caught abusing your benzos, maybe they're cutting you off right away, and you do probably need at least something, if not a strategic taper, to keep you from going into a crisis. Next question, do benzodiazepines affect dopamine levels? It's a rather complicated mechanism. The quick answer is yes. The GABA A alpha neuron receptors, basically when you're inhibiting those, what's happening is there is efferent relay that's happening that will cause a positive modulation. The positive modulation of GABA that's happening will cause the dopamine receptors to get activated. The discovery of this was found because with addictions, there's usually some sort of dopamine component in it somewhere. And of course, they found that benzodiazepines are addictive, and they wanted to try to figure out part of the mechanism why that is. And it's because when you're shutting off the benzos, you're actually, what it's doing is it's causing, your body's trying to calibrate and create more stimulation to try to balance your sedation so that you can function. And it does that by revving up your dopamine pathways. Does benzos affect serotonin? Okay, this is similar to what it does with dopamine, but instead of it being like this, right? You're increasing something that's sedating. Does that make sense? Yeah, the benzo is making you sedated, so you need something to kind of counterbalance that by elevating you. With serotonin, they're both inhibitory. So you've got one that's sedating you, they're both sedating you, right? So if one's already sedating you, then the other one just kind of shuts off. So serotonin levels actually drop in the presence of benzos. That actually brings us to the end of our questions about benzos. We have a lot of more resources for this on the website. If you look up on our Alternative to Med Center website, benzodiazepine alternatives, or find it up on the navigational bar, benzodiazepine alternatives and benzodiazepine tapering is probably the best information we have for this process on the website. There's some videos there too. I encourage you to look at that. And as always, do not change your medications or implement supplementation based solely upon what I say, because I don't know you. I don't have a medical license. I'm not, even if I did, I wouldn't be licensed probably to prescribe where you are unless I have a doctor-patient relationship, and we don't. So check in with your prescriber and see if some of this information you can bring to them and have them help you evaluate it, or at least feel into it yourself and get some other feedback on it before you do any medication changes. Thank you very much, and have a good day or night.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.